Welcome to this Thursday. Yes, it is Thursday. Welcome to this Thursday edition of the Angela Ray Show. I hope that you all have had a great day and you are winding down for the evening. For everyone who will be catching this broadcast on the replay, thank you so much for hanging out with the Angela Ray Show and showing your support. I truly appreciate it. We are in the midst of a series called Keeping It Classy, focused on education. On Monday night, I had a chance to chat with a retired educator who is now an educational consultant. And the next two nights, I spoke with people who have businesses helping students flourish from high school to college. And tonight, we are keeping it in that vein. In addition, tomorrow night, the last night of Keeping It Classy, I will have a high school principal who recently went viral. What did he go viral for? Well, you will learn a little bit more about that on tomorrow. For right now, everyone who will be catching the broadcast as a live viewer, go ahead and do me a favor. Go ahead and slide into those comments. Let me know that you are here and let me know who you are repping tonight. I put this call out last night and I don't think anyone responded. So whether you have a high school or college that you want to represent, let me know who you are representing. For me, if you don't know, by now, I am always representing my North Carolina Tar Heels, even though I'm in this red. This red has nothing to do with NC State. It is definitely all about my Tar Heels. Again, once you get on the broadcast, if you are watching it live on tonight, go ahead and do me that favor and slide into those comments and let me know where you are repping from. As always, we're going to kick it off with our Ray of Motivation moment for the evening. And for tonight's Ray of Motivation moment, this is actually a quote I heard from a fellow speaker by the name of Portia. And it kind of, when I read it and when I heard it, it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And that is, if it doesn't evolve you, it should not involve you. If it doesn't evolve you, it should not involve you. You know, there are so many things that we can find ourselves falling into these days, especially as it pertains to social media and discussions. I'm gonna call them discussions. Sometimes lately, it's just seemed like arguments and back and forth. And it is good to have a debate, to share perspective, to share opinions. I think that is part of what social media is all about. But if you are getting dragged down into the barrels of something that isn't really evolving you, then it probably shouldn't involve you. And it's not just about social media. Sometimes we find ourselves really investing way too much of our time into people, into organizations, into events that really don't move us forward. And there is nothing like giving back, being of service, being a volunteer. But I would surmise that every time you give back, every time you are of service, when you are volunteering, when you are looking to help others, that always involves you. However, just as a reminder, if it doesn't evolve you, perhaps it should not involve you. And that is tonight's Ray of Motivation moment for this Thursday edition of the Angela Ray Show. Well, tonight I have the founder and director of A to Z College Planning, Rhonda McRae. She has 22 years of licensed professional counseling experience, 11 years of independent educational consultant experience, and 10 years of school counseling experience. And she and her team at A to Z College Planning have had tremendous results. Thus far, they have helped students receive $78 million in merit scholarships, and 95% of the students that they work with get into their first choice for college. That is definitely a great statistic. So please help me welcome to the Angela Ray Show, Rhonda McRae. Rhonda, thank you so much for being on the Angela Ray Show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm loving that elephant behind you, by the way. I saw it earlier before we went live. I was like, oh, I like that. That is beautiful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So what have you been doing during this time of slowing down for many people. I don't know if you've been slow or if business has really picked up for you, but what have you been doing during the pandemic?
Been reading and relaxing and a lot of Zoom meetings with admissions reps trying to get a better understanding of this climate of the admissions process with COVID.
Okay. And so, how would you describe the work that you do with parents as well as with students with A to Z college planning?
So here at A to Z College Planning, we help families across the world make the right decision to get their child into the correct college. With over 27 years of educational experience as a school counselor and an independent consultant, I know what colleges are looking for, and we know what to do and when to do it. So we really help families. Through that college admissions process that has become a little bit more complicated over the last few years.
Now, you mentioned that you have been on Zoom meetings trying to get the latest information. And, I talked about how much money you've helped students get in terms of merit scholarships. What would you say is one of the biggest factors that impacts a student's ability to get a scholarship?
I think it includes being flexible. When you're looking at merit money is based on the student's academic profile. And sometimes students have a particular school in mind, but they may not actually be a candidate for merit money at that particular school. So I think the families that I've worked with that have been a little bit more open minded about the particular colleges have really been able to reap those benefits of getting some of that merit money that's out there.
Okay. And, I've often heard that, so much money goes unclaimed year after year. I even remember some years back, I was listening to the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and I don't know if it was Tom Joyner's scholarship or another scholarship, but literally it was like the deadline and they had no applicants. What has been your experience in terms of scholarships and whether or not many of them go without even getting applicants at all?
Well, I will say there are a great number of scholarships out there that will not receive any applications. I'm actually the member of two scholarship boards in the community. And it is almost like we just have to beg students to apply for our scholarship. And then, sometimes when they apply, the packages are not complete. So it's just really a lot of scholarships go unclaimed. And I know this year I'm on the scholarship board and we actually didn't have enough candidates. So we actually end up doubling the funding for the students who did apply
Wow.
because of the lack of applicants that we had.
Now, how early then would you say students and their parents need to start preparing for college? Is that a junior year or should parents and students start thinking about it earlier than that?
Oh, they most definitely need to start thinking about it earlier than that. Ninth grade, you need to start thinking about what colleges, what are the admission criteria for that college, because you need to start to create your roadmap. What honors classes am I going to take? Which AP courses? When am I going to take my SAT or ACT? And if you start in 11th grade, you're already behind the eight ball. I have a young lady that I met a couple of summers ago, and she is a Park Scholar over at NC State. And we were talking, and she said, Miss Rhonda, she says, in ninth grade, I set my eye on the prize. She said, and every decision that I made from ninth grade on was with this scholarship. She said, every extracurricular activity that I participated, every course that I took, everything that I did was with an eye towards that scholarship.
Now, you were just talking about honors classes. Let's say that there is a student who I don't want to say is not honors classes material, but maybe that's not where they have been steering their academic career in school. What is the best way for maybe an above average student who is not an honor student to start preparing for college?
Well, they will still need to do some of the same things as our students who are on a more structured path for college. I mean, they will still need to prepare academically because there are colleges out there, and I call them my colleges that love B students. So there are colleges out there for students who may not be as high achieving academically, but they are willing to give them the opportunity. But they still have to be prepared on the academic level to the best of their ability.
All right, we got a question from Savannah. Can you see that question?
I can.
Okay.
So, so there are a variety of scholarships that are out there. The majority of the scholarships are actually awarded to high school seniors, but there are some scholarships out there that are awarded to students who are younger. So there are those opportunities out there. You just have to search for them. A lot of those scholarships will bank the money until it's time for the student to attend college, but there are scholarships out there. Normally, what I encourage ninth, 10th, and 11th graders to do in terms of scholarship is you can start looking and identifying the scholarships. And then when you're ready to apply as a senior, you already have your list. And it's just a matter of going to the website, getting the updated application, and getting the updated deadline. But you've already done that leg work, which is the research, which is the piece that most students will not do. They don't want to do the research for the scholarships.
Okay, so we've talked about merit-based scholarships. Obviously, we know that there are academic scholarships as well as scholarships perhaps for what someone is going to major in. What are some of those not so popular scholarships that students can receive, and how can they research those? For example, I remember when I was speaking more regularly to high school students, I'd found that there was a scholarship that was given for extremely tall students who were taller than the normal height for high school seniors. How can students find out information about those kind of scholarships?
And like there's a scholarship out there for students who are left-handed, right? So it's really like a search. You can put in a search for any type of scholarships. Scholarships for students who, live in Washington State, scholarships for students who are left-handed. So you can actually just do a Google search. And then there's some really decent search tools out there like fastweb.com is a
Yeah.
really good one as well. So there's some good search tools out there.
Okay, we got another question from a fellow Tar Heel.
Okay, I'm not really sure what are the blessings and burdens of being a scholarship recipient. What I'm not really sure if I understand what you're asking. Can you clarify that for me?
Okay. Well, we'll wait for Edwin to clarify that. And my hunch is as I'm thinking about it, but go ahead and give us that clarification, Edwin, would be those responsibilities. So you get money,
What I was
but
thinking.
then there are responsibilities that
Yeah,
come with that money. Sometimes it's maintaining a certain GPA or participating in a certain number of hours of community
correct.
service. So we'll see if he can get us a clarification in there. But that was kind of what I
And
was
that's what
thinking
I was
when
thinking
I
as well.
first read the question.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, but I just wanted to make sure. And
Okay.
that is one of the important things that if you are awarded a scholarship, especially if you're awarded a scholarship from the institution, most of those are renewable, but there are going to be specific criteria. And the main one being that you have to maintain a certain GPA in order to keep that scholarship. And most scholarship programs are very open with what the criteria are. So up front what the expectations are.
Okay. And while we wait for that clarification to come in, I'm just curious. You mentioned that you have been on these Zoom calls with colleges across oh, he said that's right. So that was right. That was actually um, kind of what he was thinking. So,
Okay.
all right. What are some of the new ways that students and parents need to prepare for college during the pandemic, or has anything changed at all in terms of college preparation?
Oh yes, a lot has changed. Um, Pre-COVID, there used to be a lot of focus on the SAT and ACT, and now, as we can see, a lot of colleges are going test optional. So
Okay.
now, what does that mean? That means they're not looking for SAT or ACT scores for admissions. But of course, if you want scholarship money, you're going to have to submit those. But that also means that the other parts of the college application now become more important: the college essay, the letters of recommendation, and the extracurricular activities. So the focus has kind of shift from the test scores to now to the other pieces of the application.
And so, what are some things that students can do to be, if they opt not, obviously those test scores can make a difference in some of the scholarship and grant monies that they may receive. If they
Mhm.
opt not to submit those test scores, then what are some of the things that they can do to make the other parts of their application stand out?
I think they most definitely, students need to spend some time working on their essays. The essay is the opportunity for the college to learn something about the student that's not obvious anywhere else. So it's really a great opportunity for them to shine. And so students really need to spend some time with their college essay and make sure that it's telling their story.
Makes sense. So, given all of the challenges outside of high school and college right now, what do you think is that the biggest hurdle for parents and students who either A are have college freshmen this fall, or B have seniors this year who will be looking to go to college next year?
Well, I think the biggest challenge right now for parents and families that have the student that's transitioning into college is it safe? Do we want to send our child to college? And I have just had many conversations with families, and I'm just saying, that is an individual decision. You have to think about all of your options. You have to look at it from a financial point of view, because as we know, a lot of the college systems have announced that we're going to go back in August, but if we have to shut down, you don't get your money back. So, families have to evaluate that. Families have to evaluate safety. Do I feel safe sending my child back? Is my child going to do what they need to do to ensure that they're safe? So I think that's the biggest thing. And we have parents that are saying, let's stay home. And we have the students, of course, saying, I want to go. So it is creating a little bit of tension and a little bit of conflict in some households.
Okay. Given that you've been working with parents and students for some years now, how would you describe one of your best success stories?
I would say one of my best success stories is a young lady who was interested in, well, I have a couple, but this young lady was interested in UNC Chapel Hill, which, I'm all for that, being a Carolina grad. And I had went to go visit a school up in Winston-Salem called Salem College. And I really thought that it was a great fit for her in terms of just what she was looking for and what she needed. And she was a little hesitant at first because she's like, oh, Miss Rhonda, that's an all girls school. I don't want to go. And I was like, oh, Wake Forest is right down the street. You can go over there. So long story short, she ended up there on an academic scholarship, really thrived, was the president of the class, and actually went on to Wake Forest Law School. So that was one of those scenarios where the family was really willing to look outside of the box and look at some other options. And it really benefited her.
And so you mentioned, that school was a small school. Have you seen a shift since the pandemic started for parents and students looking to either go to community colleges for a year to defer enrollment to the original schools they were enrolled in or accepted to, or even just looking at smaller colleges in general?
Yes, here in North Carolina, I have seen many families deciding to do the community college, because here in North Carolina, there's an agreement between the community college system and the UNC system, which states if a student attends a community college for 2 years, graduates with a 3.0 or better, they're admitted to one of the UNC system schools. So a lot of families have decided to go that route with the uncertainty of COVID, in terms of, just safety, and also, saving money, but also liking that guarantee that maybe when things are better, the student will still have that option to attend a 4-year university.
Now, given that high school, so many schools across the country and in North Carolina as well, some of them are virtual, some of them are not, but particularly for those students who are looking to go to college, extracurricular activities are not the same as they were pre-COVID. What advice would you give to students who are looking to continue to make that part of their college application strong, but the traditional options aren't there?
Yeah, this is an opportunity for students to be creative. And one of the things that I'm hearing from admissions reps just across the board is, for the students to use this time to explore an interest that maybe they had but didn't have the time. Maybe it's baking, maybe it's reading, maybe it's tutoring another child, but you're really just to use this time to explore an interest that they didn't have the time to do before. And I remind students and families to remember that everybody's in the same scenario. No one's having the opportunity to get the extracurricular activities. But how can you be creative within your community? and make an impact.
All right, we got a comment from my namesake, actually.
See
I've had
that?
an opportunity to meet about 5 Angela Rays over the past few years.
So, yes, this senior year is very overwhelming. My first recommendation is to establish some deadlines. And I know sometimes that can be a challenge with our teenagers, but you just have to sit down and you have to have a plan. When are we going to work on this essay? With my families, I tell them you have to set aside time to do scholarship research. Maybe that's every Sunday afternoon from 2 to 4. As a family, we're going to sit down and look for scholarships, because if it's not in the plan, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. The main thing to keep in mind with the college admissions process is to break it down in small chunks and accomplish small pieces at one time, and not try to do it all, because it will become very, very overwhelming.
You mentioned earlier when I was talking about making applications more competitive, particularly if a student has opted not to submit a test score. What are those things in terms of that essay that can really make it stand out?
And that's going to vary from student to student. But some of the things that really help students to stand out is maybe a unique talent or interest that they have. Like right now, I'm working with a young man on his essay, and he collects vintage clothing. He just discovered this. So he goes to these estate sales, and now he has contracts with local thrift stores who will buy his vintage items. So we're using that kind of as the theme of his essay. So, we basically just kind of look at what experiences the student has and try to pull out that experience that's going to help them stand out.
And so, in your work with students and parents, is it ever too late to come to you for help? I know you mentioned freshman year is the ideal time to start. That GPA is the foundation for the
Yes,
high school GPA. And most of the time, even though you do have to submit those senior year grades, you're getting into college based off your GPA from freshman to junior year.
that
But
is
is
correct.
it ever too late? Like if someone is, I don't know, it's October of senior year, is that too late?
It's not too late in terms of us working together. It may be too late in terms of the options that are available. Right. So, some colleges have deadlines that are in March. Some colleges have deadlines in October. So it really goes back to what is the goal of that family? Where are they in that process? So it's never too late. Our options just may not be we may not have as many options as if we would have started earlier.
And so, given that some colleges are making submitting test scores optional these days, what has been your recommendation coming into the 2020-2021 school year? Do you think it's still best for students to go ahead and take those test scores so that they have them in the case of looking for some merit scholarships? Or do you think that that's some stress and or time that should be invested in someplace else?
Well, here's the thing to remember: with test optional, somebody else is submitting their scores, right? So if you have
Okay.
scores that put you in that middle 50 percentile for that particular college, it's to your benefit to submit those. Um, in terms of scholarships, yes, you have to submit your SAT or ACT scores. So I tell students, when we're looking at the test optional, we really have to look at it school by school, look at that middle 50 percentile, see where their scores fall. But like I tell students all the time, yeah, UNC Chapel Hill system is the UNC system is test optional, but I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of students submitting their test scores. So you want to make sure that you're kind of on that even playing field.
And, no one has a crystal ball. We can't see the future. I'm sure a lot of us did not see in August that we would be here where we are when all of this really started to come to the forefront in March. But given what you know thus far, what do you think may be the legacy from an educational standpoint of this time for high school and college students?
Well, I guess one of the things is just what are their options going to be, a few years down the road. We have colleges that are closing. How many colleges are going to be able to financially survive this COVID? So, what are our options going to be as a result of this? Are we going to have fewer colleges and more students applying to the fewer colleges, which makes the competition even greater?
You just mentioned some colleges are closing, and I've been hearing a lot about some of the smaller schools that may not survive this. Do you think that there needs to be a shift in terms of career contemplation for students? So much of our world is online and virtual now. So I'm hearing that perhaps there are some careers that may be obsolete post COVID. Have you had those kinds of conversations with parents and students?
Oh, most definitely. Parents are thinking, especially like I'm still in contact with some of my current college students, and, they're just concerned that are they going to even be able to get work once they graduate? So I think, my current families are most definitely looking at, what are going to be the hot careers? How can we anticipate that? And how can we position our child to be ready for that?
And so have you had many students to kind of change course, whether they are juniors in college or sophomores in college? Have they looked at this year, this 2020-21 year, school year, as an opportunity to shift?
I haven't had many who have actually shifted. I've had some students that are mainly looking to maybe shift colleges, maybe get a little bit closer to home. With the pandemic, I think some students realize the importance of, I want to get home. Can I get there when I want to? So I've seen more of that shift, not necessarily more of a shift from a major change from one to another.
Okay. And as we look to wrap this up, are there any final thoughts that you have or advice for parents and students, particularly during this crazy time in our country?
I think the main thing is, to be patient. The college admissions process is already an overwhelming process. And now with the pandemic, and if you're also having to homeschool, another child, it just makes it even more complicated. So my advice is just for parents to be patient and for students to realize that everyone's in the same boat as you are. Everyone's SAT or SATs getting canceled. No one's having extracurricular activities. So just to kind of relax and just think about what is it that I've done pre-COVID that can help me stand out in this admissions process.
All right. Well, Rhonda's Instagram as well as her Facebook are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. If you have a student who could benefit from her consulting, I definitely encourage you to reach out. Maybe even if you have that seventh or eighth grader, now might be the time just to have that conversation. Rhonda, how early? You mentioned ninth grade is ideal, but what's the earliest you've worked with a family in terms of their student and getting them prepped for the college process?
Eighth grade is the earliest that I've worked with a family. They really wanted to meet, lay out 4 years of academic plans. The student had some very high caliber colleges, a lot of the Ivies on
Hmm.
the radar. So they really wanted to make sure that they had the right courses at the right time so that the student could be competitive in the process.
Okay. So if you have a seventh or eighth grader, maybe now is the time at least to have that conversation. All right, Rhonda. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
That is it for this Thursday edition of the Angela Ray Show. As always, I would like to remind you of Ray of Motivation number 54. Cleaning a mirror does not change the person who is reflected in it. Until next time, I encourage you all to go out and be the change. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow.